Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to our show, As the Imam. We hope you all are doing well and enjoying the holy month of Ramadan. Once again, it's our pleasure to have you on our live stream, and we appreciate you tuning in to ask the questions which will help young Muslims of today in understanding Islam according to these modern times. Once again, we have our Honorable Imam Sheikh Ibrahim Husain, who will provide the answers to your questions. Please send us your questions on our live stream. We will definitely answer any questions you may have through our live Facebook and YouTube sessions, inshallah. Also, if you're concerned about maintaining your anonymity, please send your questions through text messages on the number mentioned in the below bar, and we will also respond to your anonymous questions. Also, we request you to subscribe to our show and share this live stream with your friends and family on Facebook, social media. The theme of this show is actually to provide a platform to young Muslims of today to forward their questions to a modern Islamic scholar who can guide them in the right faith with their answers. And we want to reiterate that no question is a bad question, although it may be controversial, but it's always worth asking. So please type your questions and send them over. Now let's move on with our show and allow me to introduce to our Imam. So our Imam today is again Sheikh Ibrahim Husain. And Sheikh Ibrahim Husain is a renowned Islamic scholar who is also an outstanding Qari, mashallah. He is based in Greater Toronto area and was born in Blackburn, United Kingdom. It's an honor having him here with us today. And now let's introduce you to our usual young guests. So our guests are Abyan Khan from Manchester, United Kingdom, who is a student of high school chemistry. Our second guest is Taha Azfar from Brampton, Ontario, who is a student of grade 10th high school. And then we have Areeb Usmani from Markham, Ontario, who is also a student of economics at York University. Glad to have all of you on board here today. So let's move on with the show. And the first question for our show will be coming from Taha. Taha, you may go ahead with the first question.
Assalamu alaikum. My question was, how are we expected to find a spouse before marriage if a relationship with the opposite gender is forbidden?
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you for this very important question. So now, obviously, as you know, technology has evolved and we have so many platforms available. Specifically, we have so many Muslim matrimonial websites available. For example, you have singlemuslim.com, which seems to be very famous out there as a website. And then you have, for example, you have a lot of new apps as well. I believe you have Minder and quite a lot of apps out there. Muzmatch, I think I've heard of quite a few of them. I've heard a lot of young Muslims tell me about them. So there's a lot of apps available out there as well where you can kind of, find a spouse. At the same time, though, a lot of the time, I feel that it's better or it's easier when you're kind of introduced to someone or someone knows that you're looking to get married, and then you tell someone, and they can help you. An imam can help you, an imam of a mosque who knows the community. And for example, a lot of people approach me. I have a lot of fathers who actually tell me that they are looking for someone for their daughter, and vice versa. A lot of young Muslims approach me and tell me that they're looking for a spouse. So you can a local alim or an imam can also help. That being said, I also believe that there's nothing wrong with, for example, if you're in university and you do find yourself attracted to someone, you can communicate your intent to get married. And the Quran actually mentions that in Surah Al-Baqarah, there's a verse where we can learn about how it is allowed to basically request someone, kind of propose to someone. It's allowed, in the extent that you can basically say to someone that I'm interested in marrying you, are you interested, etc., etc. So that is something that can be done as well. And then we have also the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where you can actually go and even meet someone and see if you're compatible, and you should see someone as well. So these are all the things that you could do, all the resources that you could utilize and avenues that you could utilize when looking for a spouse.
Point very well made. Thank you for answering that. And this answer is definitely going to benefit the younger generation of today who attend colleges and universities. So thank you for that. And let's move on to the next question, which will come from Manchester. Abyan, you may go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. My question is that Islam tells us to be respectful towards other people and their cultures and races and religions. So why do you think there is so much discrimination in the Asian community towards other people?
Walaikum salam. Thanks for asking this question. I think when it comes to racism, this is something that has been deeply rooted in in the human race from day one, and it's something that unfortunately was also going on at the time, during the time of ignorance, the time of Jahiliyyah, and obviously it's continued where you had people, you had the Quraysh, saying that and you had different tribes basically saying that we're better than them, etc., etc., etc. For example, like you have Banu Umayyah, for example, they could not fathom the fact that the Prophet, peace be upon him, why the Prophet came from the Quraysh, and all these kind of things, and so this is something that has gone on. Then we had the caste system. I think in the South Asian community, because we have the caste system, that really has only penetrated racism even more and more, and has increased that. And then on top of that, with the different social circles, you have those who are rich, and then those who are not, the middle class, and then the different classes, and the divisions. I also believe that society made all these divisions. When you had, for example, the British when they were in India, so it's also we can talk about how there's a lot of racism, but the reality is that if we look at the media, for example, and a lot of the time, the media penetrates racism and kind of doesn't really help in combating this. And so racism in general is out there in all societies, and I think with regards to your question, in the South Asian circles, I think predominantly it's there because of the caste system, and the divides of the social classes, and just that whole concept of you have to understand that racism, the Quran, if you ask me how, if the Quran has touched upon racism, then the biggest racist was actually Iblis, because he was jealous and he hated the Prophet Adam. Remember, he didn't want to prostrate to him, and he disobeyed Allah. And why, and his act of racism was that he was saying that, and he said that I've been created from fire, therefore I'm more superior and more honorable than the Prophet Adam. I'm more powerful because he has been created from clay. Whereas the reality is that fire is destructive and clay is constructive, and there's more benefits of clay and soil. It's used for building and growing, and so racism really started from way before, and unfortunately it is everywhere. At the same time, though, I do believe that when I look at a lot of young Muslims now, I see that we um, are kind of more aware of diversity, and we want to be diverse, and we want to appreciate different cultures, and we see that in how we're so broad-minded when it comes to cuisines, and in terms of our friends, and I believe this country has also helped us in increasing in welcoming people of other cultures as well.
Indeed, indeed, yeah. Thank you for the great answer, Sheikh Saab. And I also think that maybe what we find more in the South Asian communities is more like communalism or
Mm,
tribalism.
yeah.
Because I don't think they have an idea of race as a whole about themselves. Because a lot of them don't even want to identify as brown. But I think it's more about the community and communalism. So thank you for the answer. And a great question, actually. I think we can do a separate show on that altogether if you want to. But let's move on to the next question. And this question will come from Areeb Usmani from Markham. Areeb, you may go ahead.
So my question is when someone takes their own life, right? When they commit suicide, they're usually struggling a lot in this world. So why does Allah make them suffer in the akhirah too?
So now there's a lot of reasons why someone would commit suicide, and it's important for us to understand that if someone does, for example, if we know that someone, unfortunately committed suicide, and they could have been suffering from mental illness, for example, and therefore in that situation, then obviously they did not have the ability to control themselves, and they did what they did in those scenarios. Or in generally speaking, I believe that Allah is the one who ultimately will hold people accountable, and it's up to Allah. And we have to understand that this concept of saying Allah will punish everyone, I mean, we need to get over this, because that is up to Allah what He does. And we have to remember that Allah is the all forgiving and the ever forgiving and the ever merciful. Although the Quran has taught us that it is haram to take your own life and someone else's life. That being said, uh, we have to also kind of look at the context and understand that a lot of the times it is due to mental issues, and someone's lack of mental well-being, that someone kind of goes to that level. I'll just mention a quick story actually, on this topic. I had a friend, and one day, apparently he was coming to see me. He texted me, and then he didn't come and see me. And many many hours later, I got a phone call from the police saying that um, did you meet this person, this friend, this friend of yours? We saw that he called you um, around this time. And I said no. And then later on, I found out basically he had attempted to commit suicide. He had wanted to come and see me and talk to me. He even said to me that he had even drove and literally came to my driveway, but then he just kind of drove off. And then he had taken, he had eaten approximately 10 or 12 tablets. But what happened, and apparently the doctor said he had taken enough medication that would kill a horse. Yet, Alhamdulillah, he survived. Um, and the point is that when I later then spoke to him and I said, what was going on, and he explained to me that there was a lot of, mental distress and at home, and a lot of these kind of issues. So I think we should kind of, in terms of, I do not know if Allah, who am I to say Allah will punish them, and maybe maybe they will have a reward there. Allah knows best. So I think the reality is that um, we should kind of stray away from kind of saying that these people will be punished. At the same time, obviously, we're not saying that, we're not encouraging someone to commit suicide. But I think the reality is that people who do um, feel that they are very weak and in a situation where they have, they think that they have no help, they should realize that help is available. The current provincial government has currently provided a lot of resources for mental health right now, and they are focusing a lot of on mental health. There are a lot of services available. There's Bounce Back. It's an organization that through the phone they help people who are dealing with stress. Even if you're dealing with, for example, a sleep disorder, you can, they can contact you free. They'll help you. They'll speak to you. So that help is literally available. And there's kids phone help. There's a lot of organizations out there. There's Nasiha, a Muslim organization. I believe they do certain days in a week or weekends they have a phone line. So help is available. And I think it's important that we encourage our youth to kind of not just remain silent, and not to kind of mentally kill themselves by thinking too much and stressing and being depressed. Rather, they should address their concerns, even if it's with their parents, with their siblings. And it's important for us to kind of always have the courage to speak, because silence itself can kill a person. So I believe Allah is the all forgiving and He's the ever compassionate, and that's something that we should always remember. And Allah is His mercy is, His mercy is, and His compassion is greater than the compassion, like a mother has for a child, 70 times greater. That's what we're taught in the hadith. And we know, like, mothers, they are so compassionate. They'll always be there for their children. So imagine how encompassing and how enormous and great the compassion and the mercy of Allah is.
Absolutely, yourself. This could not have been said any better. I think when it comes to mental health, it's a very complicated and complex issue, and we all need to stop being the judge, jury, and executioner. So this could not have been said better, and thank you for that answer. A very great question. Thank you, Areeb. And let's move on to the next question. That question will come from Taha. Taha, you may go ahead.
Since we're on the topic of suicide, I wanted to ask, what are the religious proceedings that we should do when someone commits suicide, since doing a janazah is considered a taboo for them?
We have to do a janaza if it was a Muslim person. That's something that we should still do. And again, what is a janaza? The namaz, salatul janaza is really a dua. And how one can realize that is that even in the contents of the salatul janaza consist of reciting of the surah Fatiha, Durood Sharif, and then this is obviously the dua that we recite, Allahumma ighfir li hayyina wa mayyitina wa shahidina. So we have to understand that someone who did commit suicide, at the end of the day, that person is a mayyit. That person is someone who's a deceased member of the Muslim community. We cannot just sideline them. We have to do the janaza, and that is actually our right as Muslims, that we must do the janaza. So that's something that, although it may be considered taboo, but it's something that we have to do. And again, like Sharjeel, very wisely said that who are we to be the judge, jury, and executioner here? We have to leave these matters to Allah. Allah is Ahkamul Hakimin, and Allah is Arhamur Rahimin at the end of the day. And He's the Khaliq, He's the Ma'bud, He's the Creator. And our duty is that we must perform the janazah. We must make dua for these people. And it's just like someone, for example, I'll give you an example. I remember I used to teach a young guy in a mosque, and many years later, he obviously he became old and he was going to university, and apparently he had attended a festival, and in that festival later on, apparently it was discovered that he drowned, and as a result he passed away. And I remember when I attended his janazah, it was just so shocking, and a lot of his non-Muslim friends also came to that janazah. And the reality is that one could have investigated and said he was looking at what we have to be very careful about is that when someone does die, we have to look over the situation, and then we can't be doing the post-mortem ourselves and saying, okay, well, this person before he died, he was here, for example, he was not in a place where he was supposed to be, therefore this person has died, na'uzubillah, in an honorable way, therefore we're not supposed to pray the janazah. So that's something that we cannot do. The janazah is a right of a Muslim, and that's why even in this COVID situation right now, a lot of the Muslim organizations have really expressed our concerns as a Muslim community across the world, in the UK here, that we want to make sure that we provide a janazah for those victims of COVID-19. And in New York, for example, you have one imam, basically, where a lot of imams are not even performing janazahs because they are afraid, but the one individual is performing about 7 to 8 janazahs a day. So that's something that it's a right that the Muslim community is farz kifaya. Even if one person attends the janazah and does the janazah, that's a right that the Muslim has, and it's again, honor that Allah bestows upon a Muslim, and it's a great honor and the great mercy of Allah that Allah enables us to have janazah, so that even if we did something wrong, but it could be that we could be forgiven in the janazah as well. Again, this goes to show the great raham and the rahmah and the great mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Well, thank you for answering that again. And we have quite a few live questions today, Sheikh Saab. So let's move ahead with them. So the first question we have is from a user. Well, the username shows us Pollux. So it would be great if you can also share your name and location in the comments so that we can elaborate that where the question is from. But I believe that you probably want to remain anonymous, so we'll go ahead with it. So here's a question that they're saying that can they brush their teeth during fasting? And we'll also take another question after that, which is also related to fasting, from Shahzaib King. And Shahzaib is asking if we can cut our nails in rosa or fasting. So brushing and nails.
Okay, so the first question with regards to brushing the teeth, it is makruh, but remember it's not haram. Obviously one should, it's sunnah to use the miswak, but obviously not everyone uses the miswak. Now, some of us obviously we have, we have issues of bad breath. I mean, everyone who wakes up, I'm sure they don't smell like musk, unless you're an angel. But the point is that, and a lot of the times, obviously, I know we brush our teeth after the suhoor, but then obviously when we wake up now, um, obviously, again, our mouth does not smell like, fragrance. That being said, we also know the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said that, um, the smell of the rosedar, the one who fasts, is more better and more fragrant than musk, and it's beloved to Allah. That being said, dental hygiene is very important, and we are responsible for our dental hygiene. Therefore, if someone does want to brush their teeth because they feel that, they're not feeling good, and they feel that, they don't, the breath is not, uh, does not smell good, and they just do not feel comfortable, then one can brush their teeth, um, once maybe. At the same time, just don't swallow the toothpaste. You just brush, and then just, and then another thing would also be, another alternative is that if you use an alcohol-free mouthwash, that's something that you could use. We have to remember that brushing the teeth is not haram. Even if it's makruh, it's not, there's two type of makruhs, as we know. It's not makruh at tahrimi. It's not considered dislike to the extent that it's close to being haram. That's not the case. If someone does have, for example, um, you know, bad dental hygiene, for example, or poor dental hygiene, then one person should, be definitely, looking after their dental health. So I hope that answered the question. With regards to cutting nails, one should definitely, and one is allowed completely to cut their nails in the month of Ramadan, and in addition to that, one can also obviously remove their hair that they should remove, as we know that, as Muslims, there's certain areas where we have to remove the hair. So these things, and hygiene is very, very important.
Thank you for answering that, Sheikh. And then we have another couple of live questions. Um, there's a rather apocalyptic question here from Shazib King, who is asking, when will the Messiah come? So if you want to address that.
So Isa alayhi salam. So we have the coming of Imam Mahdi, and when we have the, Hazrat Isa alayhi salam also will come. Now, we have obviously signs that have been provided by the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family, that certain things will happen. And for example, how the woman will basically, kind of control the mother. So basically, the mother will give birth to um, basically her controller, the one who will control her. So that is, so like, for example, an example for that is how, for example, when daughters are bossing around their mothers, and it's something that we do see as well. And in general, um, other signs are, for example, with regards to the Day of Judgment, when people will basically boast about big buildings and all these other signs. So the reality is there's no definitive answer. Um, but again, Allah knows best. But it always, it does seem like the Day of Judgment is coming closer and closer, and the time of Imam Mahdi, that he's gonna come. But Allah again knows best, and our job is to kind of just make sure that we are practicing our faith, and we are just doing as much good as we can, so that we during that time, we kind of can follow his footsteps, and be with him, as opposed to kind of being in a state of uh, you know weakness of faith. So we just need to work on increasing and strengthening our faith.
Thank you for shedding some light on that, Sheikh. And now, before we move on to the questions from our usual guest, we'll take one last question from the user Pollux, and they're apparently saying that how do they deal with their sister, because the sister is so annoying, and when they ignore the sister, she gets mad at them. So there's a confusion with that. So I would advise patience, but I will let the expert opinion from you to come here.
So I think it's common with siblings. I'm sure we've all grown up, and we've had our little fights here and there, and we've had our arguments. And but just remember one thing, inshallah, when you will grow up, the same annoying sister will be there for you in times of need, and you will, she will be a cushion for you. She will be a means of comfort for you. I think what is important is that we respect each other as brother and sister, and we also not if whoever's older obviously has to play the role of being an elder and being the one who's more wiser and more mature. You should be more forgiving and more compassionate. um, that being said, it's important to always remember that we will one day we will definitely be mature, and we'll be able to value the siblings that we have. Some people do not have siblings. Some people are single children, and it's not easy being a single child. I mean, you have no brothers or sisters, and that comes with its own challenges. So having a brother or even a sister is a great blessing of Allah. So that's something that we should definitely value.
Thank you again, Sheikh Sab. Thank you for answering that very lightheartedly, and hope that addresses the question of the anonymous user. And now let's move on to the questions from our usual young guests. And the next question will be coming from Abyan.
Yeah. Okay, so my next question is that some Muslims still get tattoos, such as like religious words as tattoos. Is that still allowed?
Okay. So tattoos are something that should be avoided. Um, Not just because in Islam it's not allowed, but fundamentally speaking, when someone does go to a tattoo parlor to get a tattoo, we must understand that from what I've heard and what I've asked people, and people who do have tattoos, for example, converts and people who I know who obviously got these tattoos before they accepted Islam. But when you go to get a tattoo installed on your skin, not only are you damaging your skin, but what's happening is that how many layers you have to go through, so many layers of your skin. So it does, in addition to the pain, it is something that is harmful for the body. And you see that people, when, for example, they want to remove a tattoo, or some people sometimes they could have issues with regards to that. So that is something that definitely should be avoided. In let's not look at it from an Islamic perspective, but in generally speaking, it's something which is harmful for the body. Now when we look at it from an Islamic perspective, now for example, if someone has there's no need for tattoos, or religious tattoos or quotes and these kind of things, because the reality is that why do we need tattoos when we have a heart and we have our minds where we can actually store things, and we can store great thoughts, and quotes and these kind of things. So one should avoid getting a tattoo, not so much because it's not allowed in Islam, and the scholars have told us to avoid these things. And in addition to the imitation of those people who do not believe in Islam, but mainly because it is harmful for the body. And although it may seem like something cool, or something cool, or something trendy, but at the same time, I think one should value, and one should appreciate, and one should be grateful for the body and the way our bodies already are. We don't need this kind of customization. uh, you know and the same applies to, for example, piercings on the ear and piercings on the nose, all these kind of things. Or even another issue we have in our, I noticed that a lot of men are shaving their eyebrows. And that's something that obviously, for women, that's it makes sense, but again, for men, that is something that is kind of going against the nature of a man. So these are things that we should definitely avoid, and we should be happy with our appearance. We should be confident in our appearance as it is.
Thank you, Sheikh Sab. Thank you for the detailed answer. And I would personally like to ask a follow-up question related to the same type of question. Is that also because tattoo is like kind of permanently ingrained on the skin, so does it also affect the wudu and the ghusl component? That's why it's not permissible as well.
I believe that will, yeah, it won't really affect the wuzu and ghusl, because I guess you will be flowing water over it in that regard. So, for example, even like I said, uh, those people who, for example, they have a tattoo and they got it long time ago, they can still do wuzu over it. It's mainly that, the prohibition is mainly because I look at it in terms of the realistically is, again, it's harmful for the body, and it's also this kind of I would say fake customization of the body, and it's kind of a lot of the time people are getting a tattoo because I feel that, they feel like, oh well, I need to customize my body, or I need to kind of and then you have to remember that if you do get a tattoo, you're going to be end up showing your body, which again, is something that we are not encouraged to do, because we're supposed to close our bodies. We're not supposed to, you know the whole concept of the satar and concealing our body, and again, the reason for that is for modesty as well.
All right, thank you. And Sheikh Saab, we also have another follow up from Abyan for the same issue, or could be different. Abyan, you can give me.
So you said stuff like shaving eyebrows for men is against man's nature. So how about wearing jewelry such as rings or necklaces? Is that okay for men?
So a ring, for example, a wedding band you could wear, as long as it's not gold. Men are not supposed to wear gold, and even if it's silver, it has to be obviously of a certain weight. And in terms of wearing rings with a stone on, that's the sunnah of the Sahaba, the sunnah of the Ahlul Bayt. I have a ring, for example. I have a wedding band as well, and I have another ring that I sometimes do wear. You could wear a watch. You could wear a nice, Rolex, or if you whatever watch you want to wear. Obviously, that's another jewelry item that men can wear. Necklaces, that is something. For example, if you're wearing a necklace, I know some men, they wear these chains around their wrist or their neck. Necklaces is something that you have to remember, like, who wears a necklace and who wears a chain. From what I've watched as a young child, and what I've seen in whatever it's on TV, it's a lot of the times it's these gangsters or these thugs who are wearing these chains and these necklaces. So it just would if you I think someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but again, this is my opinion and what I've seen in my life. But again, I think it's going against the normal nature of a man wearing a necklace.
Absolutely, you're correct. Yeah.
Although I have seen those gangsters wearing these chains and these big necklaces, and again, but it's against the norms of.
Yes. No, you're right, because if you take Islam out of the debate, if you go to the professional environment and the corporate environment, you how to wear over a dress shirt, right? A tie, you can look more professional. So it's not a sign of decency. So that's, I think, what would add to this. It's more like an advice. I think you would say that not to wear a necklace.
Yeah.
The Islamic component, definitely you'll be able to better answer that.
Yeah. So in terms of, I think it's one should avoid it. But if one does wear something like, for example, a taweez someone is wearing, that's kind of a necklace or something. But it's just against the norm. So anything that's against the norm of manliness. So anything that's abnormal for a man is something that the deen obviously would not promote, because the deen teaches us about how men should be like men, the whole concept of muru'ah, manhood, and then obviously there's ethics for men and there's habits for men, and then women obviously have their own their own styles, and there's their own things and cultures and customs. So it's important for us to reflect on these customs and these natures.
Thank you, Sheikh Saab. And if you allow me, I would want to take another live question that I have from Sayyid Faisal Ahmed.
Sure.
Asking that, is hair transplant haram in Islam?
So I wouldn't say it's haram, because haram, obviously, then the reality is that if you say it's haram, then all these brothers who have gone to Turkey and they've got these hair transplants, and I know some of them, it's something that, again, because hair for a man is, it's something that a man obviously, it's something normal, and it's part of a man as well. And some obviously lose their hair because of stress or medical reason, and some go and do obtain a hair transplant. So I think it would be, I think it's okay for a man to get that if one can afford it. And obviously it would ideally if one, just kind of, accepts and remains confident in the the fact that they don't have hair, then that is obviously better. But if one feels that they have to get a hair transplant, then they would go and get that. I'm sure people back in the days, when hair transplants were not available, they were, wearing wigs as well. So I don't believe it's haram, and I don't see any clear prohibition with regards to that, because again, hair is part of, a man's nature.
Understood. Point very well made. And good news for you, brother Faisal. So if you want to go for a hair transplant, you may go ahead. And so let's move on to our next question now. And that question will come from our guest, Areeb.
So my question is, like we do sacrificing of the animal, right? So why do we sacrifice animals? Why do we do qurbani? What are the wisdoms behind it, I suppose?
Assalamu alaikum. Great question. The wisdom behind Qurbani is really following the sunnah of the Prophet Ibrahim, peace be upon him. And Qurbani specifically, what we do in the month of Zulhijjah, and whoever goes to perform Hajj does it, whoever does not go to perform Hajj also does it, whoever has the ability, financial ability to do so. It is an offering that is given in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's following the sunnah of the Prophet Ibrahim, but moreover, it is really, the purpose of it is to provide meat to those people who do not have the meat, and provide meals for people. That is the real concept about it, giving and supporting and providing food for people who need it. So it's an act of feeding, an act of charity. And the wisdom behind it is for us to kind of always think about those people who are less fortunate than us. I mean, think about how many of us are eating meat on a daily basis. Sometimes it's chicken shawarma, for lunch, and then for night, for the evening dinner, it's a steak. So there's so much, we have the opportunity to eat so much meat. But there's people out there, you'd be surprised, that they don't have any meat whatsoever. I remember when I was a young child, and I went to one of my mom's relatives in Pakistan, and I was a young child, maybe 5-6 years old, and I remember they said, it's time to eat now. So I said, what is there to eat? And they said, well, we're eating yogurt. So I still remember that as a child, and thinking at that time that, oh my God, like, is yogurt even a meal? But yeah, yogurt is a meal for some people. For some people, their meal is literally like, just plain roti. For some people, a meal, or literally, some like an orange is a meal. So the qurbani is really an act. And Allah says in the Quran, in the verse, that the meat itself doesn't reach Allah, nor the animal's skin does not reach Allah. What reaches Allah is the piety. And that's why when we do a qurbani, it's not about saying, oh, look how, I know people sometimes do boast and say, oh, look, my animal was so big, and look how big and fat my animal was, 70-80 kg of meat came out. That's not the point. The point is, how impactful was your qurbani? How many people did you provide meat to who have never seen meat in, for example, months or even years? So that's the whole concept, really, and wisdom.
Thank you, Sheikh. Thank you for enlightening us with the right spirit of sacrifice and qurbani. And the last question of today is going to come from Taha. Taha, you may go ahead.
So my question was, if a person is good throughout his or her life, but they don't practice or they don't believe in God, will they go to hell or heaven?
Okay, okay. So a person is a good person throughout their life, but they do not believe in God, will he or she go to hell? Okay. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that the people of goodness, they will be in everlasting comfort. Innal abrara lafi na'im, in Surah Al-Infitar. Now, if someone did a lot of good things throughout their life, so there's a person, yet he did not receive the message, no one told him and said to him, you should believe in Allah. So for example, there was no da'wat or tabligh done to that person, and that person lived their entire life, they did something good. It is possible, again, it is according to Allah and up to Allah, on the outcome of this person. And that's why we have the Day of Judgment. We have to remember that the Day of Judgment, is a day where Allah will ultimately, the records will be looked at and investigated, and ultimately Allah will decide, you know. And therefore, we have to understand that someone who has done a lot of good, that person will see the benefits of that good in the afterlife. So, you know, we should encourage good, and ultimately, again, the answer would be that, again, it is up to Allah. Allah knows best with regards to what will happen to that person eventually. But definitely, that person will be rewarded for the good that they do.
Jazakallah. Thank you, Faisal. Thank you for the elaborate answer.
I have
And
a question.
if you allow me, we can move on to the last segment of the show. And in this segment, we will listen to a surah recitation from you and its translation and meaning. So, Bismillah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أنزلناه في ليلة القدر وما أدراك ما ليلة القدر ليلة القدر خير من ألف شهر تنزل الملائكة والروح فيها بإذن ربهم من كل أمر سلام هي حتى مطلع الفجر صدق الله العظيم. So as we know, this is Surah Al-Qadr, which means, Qadr is also from Taqdeer, it also means power. And this surah highlights the significance and the importance of the night of power, the night wherein the Holy Quran was revealed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this chapter, He really emphasizes about the greatness of this night, and how the reality is that some of us and a lot of us, we have no clue regarding how great and powerful and virtuous this night is, when He says, "Wama adraka ma laylatul qadr." What do you know? What Laylatul Qadr is, and then Allah answers that by saying, and He again enables us to really think about how great this night is when He says, "Laylatul Qadri khayrun min alfi shahr." The reality is, if it wasn't for the description of Allah and the guidance of Allah and His Prophet, we wouldn't have no idea with regards to how important and how impactful and beneficial this night is. This night is greater than 1,000 months. There's a story of a man who worshipped Allah for 1,000 months, every single night. All night he was worshipping Allah for 1,000 months. Allah revealed this chapter and this surah, and Allah provided us through His compassion and His mercy and His love and His affection and His lutf. He gave us this one night, that if we just worship Allah during this one night for a few hours, we get the reward of worshipping Allah for 1,000 months. So that you had that man who was worshipping Allah every day for 1,000 months. Allah has given us this alternative as a blessing, and Allah provided this. Allah revealed this chapter, for us, so that we could benefit and we could, gain the rewards of worshipping Allah for 1,000 months just by spending a few moments on the night of Laylatul Qadr. And we have to remember that the night of Laylatul Qadr is not necessarily on the 27th night. It could be on the 21st night, the 23rd, the 25th, the 27th, or the 29th. So therefore, we must do what the Prophet ﷺ advised Hazrat Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha, and he advised her to seek the night of Laylatul Qadr. And she asked him, Ya Rasulullah, if I witness, or if I am able to realize that tonight is the night of Laylatul Qadr, what should I do? And he replied to her by saying, say, Allahumma innaka afuun tuhibbul afwa fa'afu anni. That, oh Allah, recite this supplication, something that we should repeat on the night of Laylatul Qadr. In addition to, we should recite the Quran. We should do a lot of great acts of worship. We should, do as much good as we can. We should give charity. We should, do whatever good things that we can do on this blessed night. Another great thing that we must do is continuously repeat this prayer and this supplication, which means in English, "Oh Allah, you are the one who forgives, you are the one who pardons, and you love to pardon. Therefore, forgive me and pardon me." So that's something that we can recite, inshallah. May Allah enable us to receive the forgiveness and the blessings on this coming night of Laylatul Qadr, inshallah ta'ala. Ameen.
Subhanallah. That was a beautiful recitation, and Jazakallah for the reassuring message. So before we end the show, we had a couple of follow-ups from the last questions from Taha and Areeb. If you allow us, can we ask them? All right, Taha, you may go first.
So since you said something about like how men can't wear gold, I wanted to know why that is.
That is because, again, predominantly speaking, in terms of, it is more so natural for a woman to wear gold, and women are and therefore, if a man was to wear gold, he would be kind of resembling and kind of following, what something he would be doing something that is more natural to women. So that is mainly the reasoning for a man to not wear gold.
All right, and let's follow up from Areeb.
So I had a different kind of question. My question is, so we're basically halfway through Ramadan now, and now we're thinking about Eid namaz. So how will we go about praying Eid namaz at home, like because we can't pray Maghrib, obviously. So what do we do at home then?
So because Eid namaz, categorically speaking, is a namaz which is wajib, and usually Eid, is prayed in the fields. It's not even prayed in the mosques. The sunnah is to pray Eid in the Eidgah, where the whole city gathers. And therefore, right now, when we have a situation where, we don't have any gatherings, the masajid are closed. So I believe some of the muftis are going to look, and I would basically, before I answer this, maybe next week, we'll see what some of the more experienced muftis and people who have expertise in terms of Islamic jurisprudence, what they kind of what ruling they give per se, what opinion they give. But if you ask me, I believe that there will not be a Eid namaz per se, and rather we just pray Fajr in the morning and we just gather for Eid. But in terms of the khutbah and the actual namaz, like it happens, we will not have that. And the benefits of that is in terms of, like, a lot of the times, people are coming for Eid namaz, but the question is they probably missed Fajr. And remember, Fajr is farz, and again, Eid namaz is not farz. So I believe that I think that we will not be praying Eid basically.
Great question, Areeb. And I also had the same thing in mind. Thank you for asking that. And I think I will just add a little onto that question is that, you know how in Jummah we can substitute the Jummah, the two farz, with the four farz of Zuhr. So here you're saying that there's no substitute for Eid namaz. If it's not happening, Fajr should suffice, right?
Yeah, so Fajr obviously on its own merit, but the thing is that with Eid, what will happen is, I'll give you an example. I think this will, I'm glad you came with a follow-up here and you asked for more clarification. So in our fiqh, basically, when someone misses the Eid namaz, for example, someone turns up late, there's no qaza for that. So when there's no qaza for it, that means that obviously that it's not an obligation per se as well. So therefore, based on that ruling, where that if someone missed the namaz, they don't do it, they don't basically repeat it. Therefore, because we don't have the gatherings, so then there will be no Eid namaz. That being said, there'll be no khutbah, there'll be no Eid namaz. But obviously, in our homes, we can gather, we can do the tilawah of the Quran, we can make a dua, and we can just enjoy and eat and just have a feast, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you again, Sheikh Saab. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your great questions and answers. Thank you to our live viewers who asked those questions. It definitely helped us in the show. And we encourage you to ask the same questions or different questions, new questions tomorrow again on our show. We will be here again at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and hope to see all of you again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.